You know the name. You probably have a package from them on your doorstep right now. But the story of how Amazon became, well, Amazon, it all starts with one idea, an idea that was turned into a business plan in the passenger seat of a car on a cross-country road trip. So how did he pull it off? Let's get into it. You might think it all began with some grand vision for an everything store, right? Well, not exactly. Everything that came after, the one-click ordering, the Prime boxes, even the cloud itself, it all started with a single, kind of startling piece of data. And there it is, 2,300%. So picture this. It's 1994. Jeff Bezos is working at a high-powered Wall Street hedge fund, and he stumbles on a report. It said the internet was growing at an annual rate of 2,300%. For him, this wasn't just some trend. It was like discovering a force of nature. And that really is the core question here, isn't it? How does one number, found in a Wall Street report, spark a revolution that completely changes how we all live and shop? How does that lead to a plan that would, basically take over the world? Okay, so Bezos has his magic number, but a statistic isn't a business, right? He needed a product. He needed a specific way to ride this massive digital wave that he just discovered. His logic here was just fascinating. He analyzed a list of 20 potential products, everything from CDs to dog food. But he landed on books. Why books? Well, think about it. There are millions of titles, way more than any physical store could ever possibly hold. Plus, they're all basically the same shape and size, which makes them super easy to ship. They were, in his own words, the perfect gateway drug to e-commerce. But to do this, he had to leave his incredibly prestigious, high-paying job as a senior vice president. So when he told his boss his crazy plan to sell books online, this was the response he got. It just perfectly captures the enormous risk he was about to take. So, with the idea locked in, he needed a name. And his first choice? Cadabra. Like abracadabra for the magic of online shopping. Which sounds kind of cool until your lawyer mishears it over the phone as cadaver. Yeah, not exactly the brand you want if you're trying to sell cookbooks. So that name got scrapped real quick. He eventually settled on Amazon. It started with an A, which was great for alphabetical lists back in the day, but more importantly, it really reflected his ambition. He didn't just want to build a bookstore, he wanted to build the biggest bookstore, the biggest river of commerce in the world. And that huge ambition led directly to the company's founding philosophy, a really simple mantra that would define its first decade and fuel its absolutely relentless, almost chaotic growth. The early hustle was just legendary. He kicked things off with just 10 grand from his parents' retirement fund. No pressure, right? The office desks were famously made from cheap doors just to save every last penny. The very first sale was this super dense academic book, but pretty soon orders were just pouring in. They had a bell they'd ring for every single sale until they had to stop because it was ringing constantly. That get big fast strategy wasn't just some slogan, it was an order. Within just a few years, Amazon exploded. They went from just books to music, movies, toys, and electronics. Speed was everything. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being everywhere. But just as Amazon was becoming the poster child for this new internet economy, disaster struck. The dot-com bubble burst, and the company faced a genuine near-death experience that would either kill it or forge it into something unbreakable. And the devastation was immediate. Look at this. The stock crashed from over $100 a share all the way down to just $6. Headlines were screaming, Amazon bomb. Analysts were predicting bankruptcy was just a few months away. The whole dream of the everything store looked like it was over. But instead of panicking, Bezos went cold and surgical. He slashed the company's spending, he streamlined every single operation, and he began the methodical process of building that massive, efficient logistics network of fulfillment centers we know today. Amazon didn't just survive, it was reborn, leaner, and honestly, far more dangerous. But Prime was never just about getting your stuff fast. It was a strategic masterpiece, basically a psychological trap. See, once you paid that annual fee, your whole mindset shifted. You'd stop price shopping elsewhere because you had to get your money's worth from the membership. It wasn't a perk, it was a mechanism to literally engineer loyalty. So, having survived the crash and locked in its customers, Amazon entered a totally new era. It evolved from a scrappy retailer into something else entirely, a ruthless, data-driven machine that would completely reshape the global economy.
The internal culture was driven by this Bezos mantra. Decisions weren't based on emotion or gut feelings. They were driven by data, systems, and repeatable mechanisms. PowerPoint was even banned in favor of these super detailed 6-page memos.
And this became his most famous and most feared line. It was a direct warning to every industry in the world. If you are making a profit, Amazon saw that as an opening, an opportunity to enter your market, operate more efficiently, and just take it.
This led to one of Amazon's biggest controversies. The company claimed its marketplace was this amazing platform to help small businesses succeed. But critics and sellers started to shout that Amazon was using their private sales data to identify hot products, create cheaper Amazon-branded clones, and then push those clones to the top of the search results. By the late 2010s, Amazon was a global empire. Bezos was one of the wealthiest people in history. And just as regulators started closing in, he made a move that nobody expected. In 2021, he stepped down as CEO.
So why did he step down? To focus on an obsession he'd had since he was a kid. Seriously, in his high school graduation speech, years before the internet, this is what he said his dream was. And that reveals the incredible truth of this entire story. The world's most dominant company, the machine that reshaped retail and built the cloud, it was never the ultimate goal. Amazon was simply the financial engine he needed to fund his real ambition, taking humanity to space with his company, Blue Origin. So the story isn't just about how an empire was built on Earth. It's about what that empire was built for. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on.